Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. It may interest you to know. I'm Toni Marcolini, and I'm joined today, and I'm really excited, but I'm joined today with one of my favorite authors, Tess Gerritsen. So welcome, Tess.
Oh, thank you for having me. Sounds like it'll be fun.
Well, I hope so. I was looking forward to this for a really long time. Uh, I've been anxious to get the opportunity to talk to you. Now, I read your latest novel. And I want to definitely get into it, The Spy Coast, because it's fantastic. But I like when I do these podcasts to take people back a little bit to the beginning before I get to now. So I understand that you are a medical doctor,
Mm-hmm.
which
Internal medicine. Yeah.
yeah, which is kind of amazing because you seem to be talented in a lot of different ways. I mean, first you got your medical degree, then you started writing, and from what I've read in terms of a biography for you, you actually, I guess maybe when you were on maternity leave from practicing and started writing, which was a passion in your heart. Is that accurate?
That's true. That writing was always my first love. And I got detoured from it because I had very practical Chinese American parents who said that was no way to make a living.
Yeah, right. So there comes a point in time, I guess, when you're out on maternity leave, that it's kind of in your ear, right? The passion is drawing you back, saying, "Remember me," and you start
Yeah.
writing. So do you remember putting together your first novel?
I do. I mean, before that, I had sold a short story. So my very first writing project was a short story. I entered it into a contest and won $500 for it, which was like that was a big deal.
Sure.
It did tell me that after that I won first prize that maybe I had something. Maybe it wasn't just a pipe dream. And I remember writing my very first novel. It was a romantic suspense novel. I did it while my older son was sleeping. He took great naps. And I often tell him, I owe my career to you sleeping so well.
I love that. So what happens next? You start trying to sell the novel, I guess, right? You try to find an agent.
Right. And I wrote first two novels that did not sell. So I actually think that's pretty, that was pretty quick to have sold on the third one. But it also taught me that persistence is what mattered. I just couldn't sell the first two, and I was learning. This is the thing, you learn with every book you write. So it was the third novel that actually sold.
I think that's an important message for people who want to be writers, right? It's a craft that you have to hone over time, and the best way to get better at it is to keep doing it, and the
Mm-hmm.
tenacity you need to succeed, right? It's one of those type of careers where, I mean, I hate to say this, I'm a lawyer by trade, as you're a doctor by trade, by education, certainly. Uh, and it's easier in a way because you go to law school, you go to med school, you can come out and there you go. You
Right,
are,
right.
you get a job, you hang a shingle,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
can practice, you can be that. But
yeah.
writing is not that simple, is it? I mean,
No,
yeah,
you're absolutely right. There's a predictability to professions that have
yes.
that have education behind them. So, as you said, when you're in medical school, as long as you pass all your courses and you pass your licensing board, that you are going to be employed. And you're just checking off boxes as you go through, right? You're just ticking off these boxes. Writing is so unpredictable. There's no guarantee of success. You're going to be dealing with rejection all your life, and if not by publishers and also by readers. You have to have a thick skin, and you have to do it out of love, really. If you don't love it, then you're setting yourself up for a lifetime of torture.
Right, because hard work doesn't always translate to success, right? We can study, in professions and accomplish goals, but it's not always quite the same in some creative endeavors like that. So when I see somebody successful, I always enjoy to get the opportunity to say, "Hey, look at this person," because you know how they got it, not necessarily being better than anyone, but because they were willing to keep at it.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. I'm sure there are some fantastically talented writers who've written one really wonderful book that just didn't sell, and they gave up. And they
Right.
just gave up. And that really, that's the secret of a large part of the secret sauce is, I guess I would call stubbornness. You just keep on trying. Or also, it really has to do with the fact you love doing this, and you would do it whether you got paid for it or not.
Right. Because the characters, they talk to you, right?
They sure do.
I've talked to many writers and I say, what's your creative process? So I
Mhm.
guess I'll ask you the same thing. What is your creative process? I mean, do you get your ideas because, you're just living life and you see something and it comes to you, you're like in the shower singing a song and it just pops in your head? What's your process?
Every book starts, I think, started off a little differently. Occasionally, I talk about my idea farm, which is really a manila folder full of tear outs from true crime and newspapers and things like that. So that's my idea farm, but I don't get everything from there. Sometimes it is that spark of a moment, something that happens to you at a particular point in your life, and you think, oh my God, there's a book in here. I mean, I remember, I can almost pinpoint the exact moment that each of my thriller novels was born. That moment of, aha, this is a story. And they all come from different places. I mean, occasionally they will come from a newspaper article. And the example I always use is I wrote this book called Vanish, and I was reading the Boston Globe, and it was a very short article about a woman who was found dead in the bathtub. She was an accidental overdose. So they put her in a body bag, sent her to the morgue, and she woke up in the body bag. And that was it. And she went home and she was fine. But that's that moment where I thought, oh my gosh, why is she in the body bag? What is the real story behind her, and what happens next? And that was the moment when that book was born. So little things like true crime, or some kind of a weird story that you've heard, or a conversation, or a nightmare. I've had one book that was born out of a nightmare. So ideas are everywhere. It's the characters that you really long to hear. That's the hard part, I think.
Now, I interviewed Matthew Dix, a great novelist, and he tells me that the characters to him speak to him while he's behind the keyboard. Like he can't write ahead of time. Like he can't plan an outline. He doesn't know the end when he begins.
Yep.
Right. He said he retells a story where his wife calls and he picks up the phone and he's like, I gotta go. Like the main character is just about to find out. He's like, well, what's he gonna do? What's gonna happen? And he goes, I don't know. I gotta get back to the screen. Like he literally, as his fingers move, the characters told him what they were gonna do next. But I've also spoken to people who say, you know what? No, I need to map the whole thing out. I mean, how do you work?
I'm more like Matthew.
Yeah,
I I
the
wish I could.
characters, they live with you.
I wish I could map things out, because it would be so much more efficient. And I think that maybe that's why lawyers have an edge as novelists, is that they're used to having game plans. I mean, I imagine you go into court and you have a game plan.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. So and I don't. I do. I can see a little bit ahead. I mean, I know the idea that's driving the story. I know the approximate direction it's going. But I need to have a character talk to me. And it's not that they're telling me the story, it's telling me who they are.
Yeah.
Um, and you listen to the tenor of a voice, you can tell so much by somebody talking to you in real life. How old are they? What's their gender? What's their education status? All that comes through in the words they choose and the sound of their voice.
Yeah. I think that's amazing though, because I do think the characters, they become real to your readers for certain. So why wouldn't they be sort of real traveling with you, right? I mean, it makes sense. I
They
mean,
are, and that's sometimes they become irritating too. I mean, I had a character. It was well, he was a serial killer, and he became so real to me that I would, my husband and I would talk about him, and we would watch a scary movie, and my husband would say, "Oh, Warren would have loved that movie." It's that kind of a thing where he actually becomes like he's sitting on the sofa with you,
yeah, sure.
and because he wouldn't go away, I had to write a second novel with him.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Now, I have to touch upon Rizzoli and Ives,
Mhm.
because this becomes a blockbuster series for you. I think you're on what, your 13th novel, maybe?
Yes, I wrote
For them?
13 novels in that. Yeah.
13 novels for them. And so this starts, and I mean, most people will recognize that from the TV show, right? The TNT TV show with the characters become very popular show. But I knew of them from the books.
Mhm.
Right. So that's always interesting to me. When somebody will say something, especially somebody younger than me will say something, and I'll go, "Oh, you're reading that series too." And they're like, "What?" like, no,
Yeah,
it was on last night.
I wish they had read the books. And if since you've read them, you know that it never was meant to be a series, that it evolved on its own because of the characters. And
Right.
the
So
first,
because Jane doesn't have really a big part. Uh,
no, the very first book, she's a secondary character, and Maura
yeah.
is in that story.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, right? Because it winds up becoming this series about these two women. But I do think the show, because later I did tune in. I mean, the show takes a lot of liberties. I mean,
Yeah,
from where you are traveling with them in the books.
right, right.
I mean, and they cater to, I guess, the TV audience, and there's a certain dynamic that's necessary, that's that not necessary for readers. But those characters are still amazing characters
Mhm.
you drafted. I mean, and they're great. They're just smart, funny. They're people I'd want to hang out with, right? I
Yeah.
mean, people you'd want to like hang out and like, yeah, did that really happen? Like, and have a conversation with them.
Well,
Um,
they're modeled after women that I worked with so many brilliant women in medicine, whether they were nurses,
sure.
doctors. I'm used to women being very independent, very smart, and very capable at their job. So it's like this is what I know. And it's interesting how that was considered somewhat revolutionary for television. I thought this is the experience of working women everywhere. How is this in any way unusual? But of course, Hollywood does things. They take their liberties, as you said. And the first thing they did was, of course, start the show as if they were in the midpoint of the series when these two women are already friends. In the books, the friendships they develop organically. It develops
Slower,
organically. Yes,
slower.
slower. They're colleagues first, and then a little later, they become really good friends. And the other thing they did, of course, was they changed their appearance. Now they're gorgeous. And
Yeah.
it was a little irritating because I didn't see Jane Rizzoli as beautiful in any way. I saw her as being tough and independent and ordinary looking, which was part of her persona. And I love that persona
Yeah.
because it's something that we can all identify with, not being the goddess in the room.
Yeah. But
But
Hollywood's a little different that way, right? There's a certain formula to success.
yeah,
And unfortunately, I think attractiveness is one of them, is one of the components of that.
it
As
is.
opposed to what should be. I find readers, I'm sort of an obsessive reader, right? We care more about the journey, the story, right?
Right.
I love a good storyteller. You're on the edge of your seat. You want to know where we're going. And to me, storytelling takes all different forms.
Mhm.
I like to find my heroes in unlikely people, and just, a good solid story that represents possibilities that it could be. This could have happened. This could be.
Right. Or that could be me. That could be me
Right.
doing that. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. But Hollywood's a little bit different when it comes to the screen or the television set. So I do think
Yeah.
appearance is important. And,
It's
and,
and
and
it's funny because I love British television, and it's partly because they choose to cast very ordinary looking people in a lot of their shows. Uh,
sure.
Yeah, and then you learn to love them as they look, and the way they are, and all of a sudden, somebody like Christopher Foyle in Foyle's War, who's he's an older man. By the end of it, you're in love with him, even though he's not he's not Brad Pitt.
Well, beauty takes many forms, right?
Yeah,
I'm of the opinion that it doesn't have to be, maybe you are aesthetically not as pleasing as the next person, but how easy is it to love somebody with a good sense of humor, a wit, who just
right,
makes you smile,
right,
who is maybe cheerful or just sees the beauty in things. I think
right,
beauty can glow out of a person, and it's not necessarily connected to the aesthetics of it all. So I do think you need to look beyond. So I agree with that. But talk to me about the moment that you get the call. I assume it was a call from an agent or something similar that says, Hollywood is knocking and they want to buy the rights to the series. I mean, are you Tom Cruise? Are you sliding across the floor in your underwear? Like, what's happening?
Well, I got a call from the producer. This was the conversation was like this. He said, "I love your girls, and I think they belong on television." And he, he's a wonderful, humorous producer. And he had read, I think he was like at Body Double at that point, so he already saw them as a duo. But he said something interesting. He said, we have not had a female duo since Cagney and Lacey 30 years ago, and that's what he was looking for. He thought this would be the time, the moment. But he was very clear also. He said, look, I want this show to be focused on female friendship. These women are not going to get married because men are just going to be a distraction. So he wants it on these two women. And he also had, he had a good script already within a year. And once they cast Angie Harmon, and that was within a month or so, it was all done. It was a done deal. So it was, once they had the talent, that was it.
So exciting, right? I mean, did you get to go to the set often, or did you consult at all? Did anyone want your opinion on the script?
Yeah, they were very sweet. And the showrunner said, "Do you want to join us in the writer's room and help us break the stories?" Well, I have novel deadlines, so I couldn't do that. But they did invite me. They were always very welcoming when I would show up on the set. I did go to watch the pilot being shot, because I just assumed this is it. It'll never get beyond this. I mean, every step of that way, I kept thinking, this is it. It's fun. It'll be all over with. And even when he made the initial offer, I had dealt with Hollywood enough to know that things always fall apart. So my philosophy is always, cash the check, hope it clears, and then forget about it, because Hollywood will break your heart. So many things just fail. And so when things continue to go forward, it was a bit of a surprise to me that it actually had a pilot made, and then that it was picked up for series, and then it went on for 7 series. Everything was a surprise.
Sure. And then this is the series finale. I think I read somewhere that you made somewhat of a cameo in the finale. Is that accurate?
It was not the finale, but I think it was like maybe 1 or 2 from the finale. It was they had asked me if I wanted to be on the show, and I had said, sure, I'll be on the show. What part do I play? And they said, we want you to be yourself. And I didn't know what that meant until I saw the script. And the script was one of these really meta kind of scripts where my characters go to a writer's conference and they meet the author, Tess Gerritsen. So I was just playing myself, meeting my characters on screen.
Right. That was pretty cool, I would think.
It was fun. I mean, it reminded me that being on a TV set or a film set is a lot of grueling work, a lot of repetitive work, a lot of standing around, and actors, they earn what they get. They really do.
Yeah, for sure. It's like I always say, this creativity at that level, it takes so much collaboration. Right. And there's a lot of work behind every, we watch a movie or we watch a TV show, we see this polished product.
Right.
Right. But then you have, the hard writers who put it on paper, and then the actors who breathe life into these characters and memorize all these lines and try to bring the nuances that there are to these characters. And then you have the cinematographer, the director, who's visually taking you through the story, the editor who's picking just the best cuts, and
even the lighting. I mean, the lighting is so important.
Yeah, exactly. The lighting, that the person putting the score to it, the music that makes you sit on the end of your seat.
Sure.
We tend to see this polished product and not realize how many creative hands were in that pot, like, to make that happen. It is work, like any other career. It's work.
And as you said, it's a big collaboration, which is why I like writing novels, because it's just me and my characters at my desk. And I don't have to deal with all these other people telling me what to do.
And you don't have to worry about the cost of having them, run by the bridge.
Budget, right.
You can have them do any action sequence and you're not worried about filming it.
That's right.
And what will the cost be? Can I really scale the Eiffel Tower? So I know there is something to that, and it's also isolationist to a certain extent, right? Being on your own writing, it's you and your characters. It's more isolating, is it not?
It's in my nature, though, and I think a lot of writers, we're very happy sitting in our in our rooms by ourselves.
Cup of tea.
It's, you know, when I go on book tour, it's an effort for me because I'm an introvert. And
Yeah.
I mean, I can play a good extrovert for maybe a couple of hours, but after that, I'm back in my hotel room in bed, you know, eating room service and watching television. I'm perfectly happy. So there's a personality type that likes being alone with their characters and the voices in their heads.
Yeah. So what we have to talk about your new novel. All right, The Spy Coast is the name of it.
Mhm.
And I have to say, I read the novel. I read it in a day, and you're in it from the minute you begin, right? There's no other way to put it. I like to think my favorite genre, I say, is literary fiction. However, I could somewhat misrepresent that. You know, like that's something I throw out there and I say, yeah, I think that's my favorite. But the mystery, the thriller mystery is really uh it's way up there, and it's almost like my guilty pleasure. You know, that's this thing I sink my teeth into and I can't put down. So I was curious as to see where we go. I had certainly read, your Rizzoli and Isles series, and I start and literally I'm on the first page, I'm in it. All right. You put it right out there. It's like, and you immediately want to know what in the world's happening here. What's this about? I knew I was gonna love it. I knew it was gonna be a thrill ride, and it was. It's a page turning thrill ride.
Well,
Uh,
I'm glad you thought so. It's funny because for me, I wasn't thinking of it as a thriller as I was writing it. I think it was more an exploration of what happens to people when they're used up and thrown away, and they still have adventures left in them. It was more, I think, an exploration of my own age, because as
oh,
I've
that's
gotten,
interesting.
yeah, as I've gotten older, I think I've noticed, and I think that most of us who, especially women who hit 50 and beyond and 60 and 70, we start to feel as if nobody's paying attention to us, that we have so much wisdom and so much, accumulated knowledge that we have to share. We know where the bodies are buried, and yet everybody's eye is on the goddess in the room, not on us. So it was that exploration of, what is it like to know you have a lot to contribute, but people don't care. And that's where my Maggie Bird comes in. Of course, I also started off with her voice too. I heard her voice in my head saying, "I'm not the woman I used to be." And I thought, okay, tell me more, Maggie. And that's how it all came out.
Well, I found myself I wasn't ready to leave, right? I wasn't ready to leave Maine when you ended it. And I found myself hoping to go back to Maggie and Joe, and like the hoping that there would be a series, like, just that the group, the gang, right?
Okay.
Like
Yes.
I'd hoped I could revisit the gang, like and there would be some series out of it. So I'm just gonna put my little hope right out there that I
Well,
hope
I'm
we
I'm
could do
finishing
that.
that book. I'm finishing that book now. It's the
Oh,
second.
it's the second. Oh, very good. Because I
Because
wasn't ready to leave. I wasn't. When it ended, I was like, but I want to hang out with these people more.
see, that's how series start, is that the author can't let go of the characters. The characters are still hanging around. And I love these characters. I love, especially, I feel like Joe, the local cop, who was, she's like salt of the earth. She's a Mainer for many, many generations. And here she's dealing with this circle of spies in her town. She doesn't know what to do with them. And I love that conflict between young and old and local and from away, and people who are really sophisticated and somebody who just has common sense. So
And that's
that's,
exactly what it is. Right.
yeah,
I mean, she's clearly got common sense, and she brings the humor to the novel that really isn't, it wouldn't otherwise be there. To me, Joe brought the humor because just to the extent that she is, who are you people? Like, right. Like there's a funniness to it. And she's like, okay, like she's always two steps behind them, trying to catch up. So that was, to me, was a little bit humorous. And maybe that comes from my own age, like that I could see the young person not quite getting it, but being
yeah,
smart
right.
to know there's something more here. Like, I'm feeling a breeze, like there's
Yeah.
something. Yeah. So I did find that she brought that to it, but these are just great, quirky, interesting people. that you wanted to spend time with and how their brains worked. And the story, it's a great story. I mean, I didn't see the end coming. I'll say that. I mean, I certainly don't want to be I'm not giving any spoilers away. I'll just say I didn't see the end coming.
Well,
Uh,
that's good.
right. I'm almost at the very end by the time I go, right. By the time I figure it out, you
Yeah.
almost had me there.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
so it's,
yeah, and that's great. I think I think a lot of it was the mystery of why is Maggie retired? What drove her away, and what is her secret grief? And I wanted to, that's what I tried to explore. And I guess that surprise ending actually surprised me as well, because I did not know at the end who is doing all this.
yeah. I mean, by the time I figured it out, you're almost there at the end. But I mean, this is a really intricate, well-written mystery. I'll say for the mystery lover, I found it to be a bit of a thrill ride. I like mysteries that are like fast paced. Somebody's life is at stake. Things are happening. That to me is a thriller. I don't categorize thrillers to me as like gory. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that to me is not, I don't enjoy that like horror or gory at all. But this kind of thriller where there's a fast-paced mystery that you bet your mind better be firing on all cylinders if you want to stay alive. I mean, that's the pace to the book. I mean, it's just a really well thought out mystery. And that's why I was struck by the fact that early on when you said, hey, no, I sit with my characters and they tell me, because it reads like something you would have planned out ahead of time. There's so many layers to what's happening that you're thinking, this had to have been, but no, like you're going and you're winding through, which I think is a
Yeah.
credit, to your brain, how it must work.
Well, a lot of it is massive rewriting. I mean, I will write to a certain point and I'll think, oh, I need to put that scene in there. So there is a lot of rewriting and reshuffling of scenes, past and present. And also Joe's scenes. Sometimes I would write several of Joe's scenes at once, and then I would shuffle them into the story. It's an elaborate and crazy way to write a book, but I don't know how to do it any other way.
Yeah, this is a really good book. As I said, for the people who like mysteries, it is a mystery. I guarantee you will not figure out what's going on until the end, which is hard. I mean, I read a lot. I'd say at every given moment I have an audiobook going and at least one book that I'm reading on my Nook. And that's always the case. And I probably go through at least 3 books a week. I mean, I'm always reading. So I look for writers who can keep my interest with a really well told story.
Mhm.
And then those writers I'm very loyal to. As soon as something releases, I snatch it up. And I consider you in that pool of people, right? I'm always like, was the story? I know it's going to be a good story. I know you're going to keep me till the end.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
and so I guess that's one of the reasons I did want to talk to you as well, because I said, what does this mind work like that is able to do this over and over again?
It's a little bit like being a fantastic gymnast. Your body knows what it's doing, but you can't really tell to somebody else how it is you do these fancy moves.
Yeah.
It just happens. It just happens. And as I say, I gotta give a lot of credit to my characters for helping me along and telling me which way to go. But also, I think I start off with a sense of purpose or a theme. In this case, old age is no barrier to the next adventure, and that was my theme here.
Sure. And these are just to give a little bit of a background. This truly is about a group of retired CIA agents, really. I mean, these are a group of old like spies, that they're past their point, I guess, in some minds of being useful. But they're not really, are they?
No, and I should probably point out that they're based on my own little town here. It's
That's cool.
it was something that I discovered when I moved to Maine 3 decades ago, that we have a lot of retired CIA here. In fact, my little street that I used to live on had 2 spies on either side of me. And my son's best friend, his parents were married spies. And so it's been 3 decades. I thought, well, this is an interesting thing. I'm going to file that away. There's a story here. I don't know what it is. And it just took time to come out.
Yeah. And when it's really, like I said, it's well done. And I found that I liked the wisdom and the wit. I mean, there really is just something about a person who isn't learning it for the first time, but anticipates, right? And there's this group of people, they anticipate, they know their way around, you
Yeah,
know.
and they look behind. They've lived in a world of mirrors, so they never take anything at face value. They're always questioning. And that's something, that's the wisdom they bring that Joe maybe doesn't have yet, but she
Right.
will.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine as we travel along with her, she will. But this is a great town. It's just like a really funny, quirky town that you like a lot. So now talk to me about the book is I believe released already, or it's about to be released.
November 1st is the official release date. Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, so I'm definitely highly recommending that people pick this book up. You will not be sorry. I have to ask you about something else, though. I know that initially you were writing, you know, they said you put like the medical kind of mystery together, and then I read that you can compose music as well.
Yes, I can. You know, at a it depends on the situation because I did compose a piece that went along with my book, Playing with Fire, which was set in Venice and in the 1940s
I
during.
haven't read that one. I'll pick that one up.
Okay, well, that was the one that was born out of a nightmare. I was in Venice for my birthday, and I dreamt overnight that I was playing my violin, and there was a baby sitting next to me in the dream, and I was playing something really dark and beautiful, and the baby turned into a monster. And I woke up and thought, I have no idea what that dream was about, but there's got to be a book in this, you know, somehow music waking up the savage beast, not taming the savage beast, but waking up the savage beast. And I walked around Venice that day and ended up in the old Jewish quarter where they have these memorials to the Venice Jews who died during the Holocaust. And there was one wooden plaque with names. And I remember seeing this whole group of names, all the same last name, obviously a family. And that became the story, Playing with Fire. It's about music. It's about the Holocaust. And it's about a woman violinist in modern day who goes to Rome and buys some sheet music in an antique store that's been handwritten. Every time she takes it home and she plays, when she goes home, every time she plays it, her 3-year-old daughter goes berserk and does something awful, becomes the little monster of my dream. So she thinks the music is haunted, and she has to go back to Italy to find out what is it about this evil piece of music. And then flashback, we see what happened in the 1940s, who composed it, how he came to compose it, and why this music has such power. And so it started off feeling almost like a ghost story, but it ended up being very, very logical at the end.
It's got
But
a lot
anyway,
of, I gotta say, it's got a lot of that Edgar Allan Poe feel to it. I gotta be honest.
yeah. But in the middle of writing this, you know, I was describing this waltz called the Incendio Waltz, and I kept describing it in words. And a couple months into writing the story, I dreamt the melody, and so I woke up that morning and there was a melody in my head, and that's how I ended up composing it, because it came to me in a dream. This very talented violinist did record it. You can hear it on YouTube. And it sort of like goes with the story, because when you hear about the description of this music, you can actually turn on the recording and hear what it sounds like.
Yeah, wow, that is interesting. I guess I was curious about that because certainly I guess when I look at you and I said the medical stuff seems natural to me. Like you went to medical school, it seemed natural that your characters would have that background or have that knowledge. And so that was obviously the medical mystery or the medical, you know, that seemed, but the music, I said, wow, like because the music has to be more of a hobby for her, right? Just something like,
Yes.
oh, I always enjoyed music. This is a hobby.
Right.
And I wondered about that. Like, I interviewed another author, Brandon Slocum. He does
Yeah,
the,
yeah. I've
yeah,
talked to Brandon.
yeah. So he does these musical. I mean, his 2 novels, at least the 2 that I've read, have musical overtones. They're really written from the point of view of somebody who's involved with music. The musical thriller, I think they're saying about him now, right? That he writes the musical thriller. And I guess I wondered, like, the overlap for you, if you ever felt called to write, a musical thriller, like something because of that background.
Yeah, no, that was a one-off, and it was, as I said, it was a very weird story that the idea came to me in a nightmare, and the music came to me in a dream, and it was all somehow working in my subconscious. I'm just an amateur, but I'm good enough to be able to sit down at the piano and write and compose music.
Well, what a creative person you are, right? I mean, to be able to write, to write novels, I think is a hard enough thing. To create music and to have that passion and to have your hand in so many things that you're doing well at. Boy, I applaud you. I think you're a great role model for women everywhere.
Well, I think there's a fair number of novelists who also play music. I mean, I'm thinking about the late great Michael Palmer, who was a medical thriller author, and he used to perform on stage at Thriller Fest with his harmonica. He was great, and his accordion. He was a great musician too. So maybe there's something to do with the way the brain works and how music and coming up with stories is using part of the same brain.
But art and science don't often coexist in the same brain, do they?
No, they don't. And this is how I met Michael, is that we used to teach a course for medical doctors who wanted to become novelists. And that was a tough job because medical doctors, I mean, through our training, we are taught to be objective, not subjective, to over explain things, to stick to the facts, to not let our emotions get hold of us. And those are all the things you need to be a writer. You need to have that, these emotions pull you out of yourself. You need to be subjective as a writer. So we had to break a lot of bad habits from our students before we could really get them to focus on writing. And it's also humbling for somebody who's gone through medical school or law school, because they're all straight A students. They've all achieved, multiple academic things. And here they're being told by some 25-year-old editor in New York that they're rejected. There's a lot of ego that gets hurt when you change careers like that.
Yeah. No, I would imagine that that's the case. I mean, I think it's hard enough. I'm not, and this is not critical, but a lot of those type of businesses are run by the young, right? So, and I don't mean tend to be critical, but I think it's hard for a young person to gauge a few things. One, to gauge what is a masterpiece and what is not, right?
Mhm.
Because there's a certain amount of being exposed. And you can get an education, you can certainly read a lot. But if I look at myself now and I consider myself fresh out of college, let's say, for example, or fresh out of even law school, I'm definitely not the discerning reader I am now, right? I definitely have been exposed, even watching a movie or watching a TV. My tastes are almost completely different
Yes,
because it's
yes.
grown over time. It's in a way you figure out like who you are and what you like. And as you get exposed to more things, you get to see what is finer or what is, it's like that almost with anything. A fabric, a china. I mean, you get to know quality. And I think as you age, quality becomes more obvious. So there's somewhat of a disservice, and I'll get a bunch of emails on this now, but I mean, there is somewhat of a disservice, to having the youth run those type of businesses, because I think there's such a huge audience of people who are more discerning and would like to see more discerning things, more quality.
Well, that's why there's a book for every age group. I mean, if you are 15, you want to read a different book than somebody who's 65. So, I mean, that's where the whole the young adult fiction comes from. And whether quality is very subjective. Okay. It's one of these things where what thrills a 15-year-old is not going to thrill a 65-year-old, and vice versa. So maybe they do need to have young, hip editors doing the young adult work, and maybe somebody who's used to work at the New Yorker working for with older authors.
Yeah, but there needs to be some level, I guess, of variety. And I maybe my criticism is coming in more towards television, I think, and movies,
Oh, yes.
than necessarily books. Because I do get that. I mean, there are a variety of editors and agents in terms of their experience, I think,
Mhm.
handling different parts. And I think readers are lucky in that regard, where you can find something to suit your tastes.
Yeah.
But that's not really true. And when I think of the entertainment business, I do think of like TV and movies, and that's not
Oh,
always true there.
no, and television, you're right. There is a lot of it is wasteland. A lot of it are shows where, I mean, my husband and I will watch maybe 15 minutes and go, how did this get made? You know, or
Yeah.
who gave this the green light? We don't get it.
And
And
who's
and
watching it with
you
them?
know, and as a result, we have migrated more and more to British television. Acorn and BritBox and all those.
Sure.
Their mysteries are very complex and very well thought out, and have characters who feel much more textured than a lot of what we see on American TV.
Sure, and I love the Agatha Christie. So I was a big fan of her novels, so that they started, when they started doing that to like make her books, I guess you could say, into
Yeah,
shows and
yeah.
movies and stuff. I really enjoy that myself. That from when I've been young, and those are great characters. Uh,
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
just comparatively speaking, her Miss Marple and her Perot, those are older people taking you through the mystery.
Yeah, and would they be popular with young people now? I don't think so.
No, I don't think on American TV, I don't think so.
Oh.
Right, because you don't see many successful shows that have older characters, certainly some hybrid,
Hmm.
right, some hybrid, so you might have the young people carrying it, right,
Yeah.
and then they have parents or coworkers or the co-stars that um bring something to it. I always say I love the sitcom Everybody Loves Raymond, but if the parents weren't in it, I don't watch it. So like the
Yeah,
parents to me what made the show, uh,
sure.
those characters, and even though they're the older characters, and I don't think audiences necessarily realize that, like that
Hmm.
the parents really made that show churn.
Well, I think it's a function of how Hollywood, Americans think. Americans are really focused on youth and beauty, and maybe not so much on character or uniqueness. If you're beautiful, you have a big leg up. And then I go to watch something on British television, and the actors they're not slim, they're normal, they're solid, but they have amazingly subtle facial expressions, and they can just with the twitch of the eye, what they're thinking. And I don't know whether it's because British actors are better taught or just that they have better camera work, or certainly it seems like there's a lot more really super close-ups on British television. You can see the little micro expressions that you can't necessarily see on American TV.
And they cast, I think, much more seasoned actors,
Right,
right?
and people that show up on different shows, the
Yeah,
same actors kind of go through all the mystery series on British television.
yeah. So I think that's probably a component of it as well. So talk to me about what you're working on now.
So it's the next book in the Martini Club, which is the sequel to the Spy Coast. It's I bring my characters back. Joe's back. The Martini Club is back. But this time the mystery is very local. It's restricted to the town of Purity, and it's about a teenage girl who is a summer person. People come here for the summer and then they go home. A teenage girl who disappears,
Mm,
and they don't know where she is. And the prime suspect is Maggie's neighbor Luther, because he was the last person to see this little girl, and
the
now
grandfather.
she has to find. She and her friends are going to try and get him out of out of hot water. But it's again that there are threads back to Central Intelligence and to the history of the CIA in Mid-Coast Maine. Things they did here are going to come back to haunt them.
Mm. Well, I can't wait. I mean, honestly, when I finished this one, I was ready to pick up another one. So I certainly can't wait. Will you be continuing with Rizzoli and Eyes as well?
I don't know. I don't know. I think that the sales have dropped significantly since since the show stopped, and I'm not sure if people are still as interested in Jane and Maura anymore. I certainly had an idea for another Rizzoli Isles book, but I'm having a lot of fun now with my Martini Club, so
Well,
I
yeah,
could go back and forth.
yeah, I will say that this is a unique world that I enjoyed stepping into, and I definitely want to hang out with these characters again. So I'm glad to hear that that's getting turned into a series.
Yeah.
In terms of Rizzoli, I mean, I certainly would be interested in keeping up with it. I like a series. I like to keep going along with my characters and seeing their new mysteries. So I certainly, speaking as one reader, would enjoy getting to see another one. But not to deter you from continuing
Okay.
with what you're going on. So now I'm going to put up a link to I guess your website is the best place to get information about you.
Yeah, just go to tessgerritsen.com. And I have my book tour schedule on there if they want to check that out. And read a little bit about the books, and so you know what you're getting before you order them.
Well, these are, I mean, truly, I can't say enough, some of the best mysteries I have ever read. I mean, these are just well played mysteries. They lay out really well. There's enough twists and turns, and enough character development, right? It really doesn't just pound you over the head with some mystery and some clues. It's not like a traditional police procedural feel to it. I mean, it literally, these are characters with a lot of backstory, a lot of depth. And I think that's what I enjoy about my literary fiction, right? I really enjoy getting to know people and
Yeah.
dynamics and, 10 generations of family, nonsense that has happened to make people who
Right.
they are now, right? I really enjoy that. And I find that you kind of fit that little weird niche for me, because I get enough character development and enough backstory that I feel like I know these people and there's that element, but then there's this really well played out mystery going on. So I like that a lot. I just want a chance
Well,
to compliment you on that.
thank you. To me, the mystery is always secondary. It's that I write these and I read these for character.
Yeah, and that shows. I mean, it really does. It shines through, and that's one of the things I like a lot. And I like personally because it fits for anybody out there who likes literary fiction and then likes a good mystery too. This is where those things meet because a lot of mysteries, while they're good mysteries and they're funny, interesting characters, it's not quite the same. It's not like that literary fiction kind of character,
Mhm.
where you really get to know somebody and there's just a lot of nuances to what's going on in their head and how they've gotten to where they are in their journey of life and the dynamics of the people who surround them. And you give that and you combine that with the mystery. And that's a very unique thing about you.
Well, I
So
hope that after they read this, they'll look at their older neighbors with more interest. That's all.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
Yes.
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to talk to you. I so appreciate that you took some time to come talk to me. Uh, and I hope that when your next novel comes out, that you'll come back and talk to me again about the new one.
Sure, sure. I'd be happy to. Well, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
I'm going to put up a link to her webpage. You can certainly buy her books anywhere that you can buy books. So, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, the local bookstore, you're going to be able to get her books. I'm sure her website is going to have links to where you can purchase the books. And you can go into your local library. If money is tight, go into the local library. You can check out her books as well. So I highly recommend it. It's a great read. You will not be sorry. So thank you and have a great day.